Right, so Melissa and Jack have popped out because today I'm going to be taking up a lot of the floorboards in the saloon and the galley because I need to solve this bilge pump issue. As you know, when we bought the boat there was quite a bit of water in the bilge. Most of it had come in through the mast aperture, and although we've got the mast in and a boot on, it does still leak a little bit, so I need to buy a new mast boot kit. I went to the chandlers yesterday to buy one and they hadn't got one in stock, so that's fine. We'll just get a little bit coming down the mast. There's condensation just from living, you know, and changes in air density and condensation and humidity, so that runs down the inside of the boat, hence it in the bilge. And one or two of the hatches have got the odd little drip here. The cheek blocks seem to have a drip as well, so I need to rebed those. But I can't do everything all at once. I can't fix everything in an afternoon. But the most important thing is make sure that the bilge pumps are working, so that when we leave the boat and go back home for several days or even a couple of weeks at a time, we don't come back to carnage. When we got back here the other day, the water was quite high in the saloon bilge, and I've got a bilge pump in there, but it hadn't kicked in. It's one of the float switch types from Seaflow, and I don't know why. I managed to then, when I gave it a shake, it emptied the bilge. So obviously the float switch had stuck somehow. So that was a little bit of a worry, and kind of, if we'd been another week, it would have been quite serious. So not a boat sinker, but it would have been a lot of water. So I want to sort that out. And I've been and bought one of these, a Rule, which doesn't have a float switch. It's an automatic one without a float switch. So the first area is this panel here. These two panels lift up, and the water that runs down the mast and anything that comes in through the anchor chain locker or condensates and runs down into this bilge ends up down here. And there's about 3 inches of water in the bottom of there now. And the other thing I've noticed with this fairly inexpensive Seaflow pump, it's fine and it moves a lot of water. But when the water gets down to the bottom of the float switch, you can hear it kind of struggling to pick the water up, but then it can't shift it. So one solution to that is, of course, because what's happening is it's pumping water out the bottom of the bilge, the last kind of 1/4 of an inch, getting it 6 inches up the pipe. It then hasn't got the pressure to push it all the way up, so it's falling back down and it's just keeping the pump running. So I might use these are one-way valves to stop backflow, which is pretty standard practice. But have a look in this bilge and I'll show you the way that I've got it rigged up. So what I'd done is I'd got this Seaflow pump wired directly to the battery, and I'd simply got this length of pipe and just dangled it into the sink in the galley. Which works absolutely fine, and then I've just got these two. The bilge pump wants to float, so I've mounted it on a piece of stainless and then strapped it to these 2 pieces of wood. That was a very Heath Robinson bodge job, just so that we could leave the boat and hope that we'd have some sort of bilge pump working. And you can see there's a few inches, not very much, there's a few inches of water in the bottom of there, no big deal. So I'm going to give you a before and after of the bilge that I'm working on. I'm going to give it a quick clean, and then I'm going to explain how I'm going to go about installing this bilge pump. Here is the before. Okay, and there is the bilge after giving it a quick clean. I've removed the bilge pump completely. One thing that we've learned over the last 2.5 years of doing boat work is focus on the job that you're doing now. And I'm so tempted to now spend time cleaning it and cleaning it and cleaning it and giving it another lick of paint to make it look presentable, but that's not as important as making sure we've got a working bilge pump. So now that bilge is empty and it's clean, it just, yes, okay, it could do with another lick of paint eventually, but I just want to focus on the job and not get distracted by re-cleaning, you know, scrubbing that to within 1 inch of its life. However, the caveat to that is you've got to make sure that there's nothing in your bilge that can block your bilge pump, because that's a boat sinker. little screws or bits of Lego if you've got kids on the boat or anything like that. So I'm ruthless about that. There's no big lumps of hair, and you know, when you're living aboard, stuff gets dropped on the floor. It's inevitable, and it's really important to make sure that your bilge doesn't get blocked. Anyway, that's now in a state where one part of me is saying, oh, clean that, it looks awful. The other part of me is saying, focus on the bilge pump. I'm using M10, totally overkill. Totally overkill this. I'm using M10 stainless steel threaded bar, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to tap a thread in the timber, which again is completely unnecessary. I could just drill a hole through and put a nut either side, but I'm being a bit, I don't know, over-engineering this a little bit. So by using a drill tap, you can see this is a drill with a tap on it. I can actually hang on. Whoops, that's come out. But that drills, I've already drilled the pilot hole obviously, and that has now got a thread inside it. So that will now thread onto my steel bar, and it means I will still have a locking nut and what have you on it, but it means that I can adjust the height of this plinth. I've often said this is not a how-to channel, and I maintain that. But I don't know, some people might find this beneficial. I'm sure many of you out there like not going to learn anything from this, but somebody might. There we are. So that's now held down nicely, so that while I'm lowering it into place, there's inevitably going to be a certain amount of leverage and force on this tube, and I didn't want it to snap the fairly fragile blue plastic at the bottom there. I've drilled a 10mm hole, 10.5mm hole in there, so that my stainless bar can go down there like that. There you go, and I can position that exactly where I want it in the bilge, and there's enough clearance this side for the pipe to come round in a loop, and eventually it'll go. I don't know if you can see on the camera from that angle, but the pipe from the bilge pump will come round in a loop and up here. So Andy's outside about to drill a hole through the top sides of the boat to run the bilge pump that he fitted earlier on out of the boat. So he's running the pipe work and then putting a hole and doing a skin fitting. But while he's doing that, I'm doing some sewing. I've got my little old machine that I had lots of trouble with yesterday, and all I'm doing is just making some temporary cushion covers for these seats, because the boat came with no upholstery, so we've managed to get hold of some cheap sort of foam mattresses, and we've cut them up, but eventually we'll get decent upholstery and decent cushions and stuff and do them all properly. But for now, more because I need the practice, because I can sew-ish, but I don't want to go straight in with a good fabric. And we had some leftover vinyl from the headlining in Melody. So yesterday, this is my first box cushion I've ever made. I made these. I didn't film these. I had no end of problems with the sewing machine, but I've just done a Velcro. There's like a Velcro thing on the back to slot the cushion in, and yeah, it's alright. In an ideal world, I would have used a different fabric on the bottom, just because obviously the vinyl sort of, the air takes a while to come out when you sit on them, so I should have put a mesh fabric. So that just goes there in this U-berth, and I'm doing the foam, the cover for this piece of foam, and then I'll do the one I'm sitting on
and then we'll do some backs.
Cabling wise, I use this stuff. It's called Ocean Flex, and it's marine grade tinned cable. I'm going with 14 AUUUUUUGE American wire gauge, which is 2.5mm squared. Is that right? Yeah, I think it is. Basically, it's overrated for everything. Because of what it means is, the longer the run you have on a cable, the more drop you get in the amount of power going down the wire, to put it in simple terms. So, and the more heat that can generate. So you have to use a heavier gauge cable. For certain things, I'm using much heavier gauge cables. So when I put things on like the solar panels and the wind thing, that's a totally different scenario. But for all of my normal wiring, I just bought a 100-meter drum of 14 AUUUUUUGE wire, which is overrated for some stuff, but will just basically do everything. I'm just being careful that if I do need to go heavier, then I can.
While Dad's working on the electrics, he's taken over the whole boat, and me and Mum have come and did the aft end, and we're just working on sewing and ecology.
The pipe comes from that bilge pump round here, no kinks, through this hole in there, and then I've got to route it round here, and I've got some pipe clips to take it up through to the cockpit locker, where I'm going to put a skin fitting. Okay, that was a lot more difficult than I thought. I've got all the tubing posted through to where it needs to go to. It comes down, hang on, into here, into our sail locker. This white pipe comes through a non-return valve and then up and through a skin fitting. And my plan is to put another one there, because the pipe that I've just routed is this clear one.
So I took the vinyl up to the shower blocks and had a nice clean area to lay it out, dry mainly, because outside the pontoons haven't dried. So I was going to use those, but basically what I'm doing is making a top bit and then a bottom bit. So I've got corners that need to sew together. I watched a Sailrite video on how to make a basic box cushion, and that's how they said to do it. I'll just sew these together, and then the foam is 5 inches, and I've done 4 3/4 inches, so it will compress it slightly when I sew it together and make it a lot harder to get. I'm hoping that the machine plays ball, because it got stuck in reverse and stuff yesterday. I really need a new machine. I would love a Sailrite, but that's not affordable. So if anyone can give us any affordable suggestions for an alternative to a Sailrite would be amazing, because we want to take a decent sewing machine with us, and to be able to do all our own canvas work and stuff like that. I will say that this is a completely non-essential job for getting back to Wales in this boat. However, because I'm pregnant, I can now get away with doing all the nice non-essential jobs. It's great. While Andy's doing the essential jobs like bilge pumps and stuff like that. And we do have bilge pumps, obviously we're in the water, but he's just improving them.
Right, it's the moment of truth. There's a tiny bit of rainwater has got in over the last day or two, but not enough to come to trigger the float switch. It's not, like I say, these aren't a float switch, they're like a weird kind of sensor. But I'm going to tip some water in and see if we can get it to trigger the switch, and then pump that out of the bilge. If it doesn't work, I'll be annoyed. Oh, it's doing. Hang on, I can fill that bottle up again. Okay, so it's pumping that water. Let's just run outside and check that that's okay. Bear in mind, this is literally fresh tap water I'm pumping out, so I'm not emptying any nasties. Oh, it's already done it. There actually doesn't seem to be enough pressure. Maybe. Is it actually emptied it already?
No. Oh, completely.
That's strange. It's pumped it. There just perhaps isn't even enough to fill the pipe. Let me see where we've got to. It's kind of dark to be filming this. Perhaps, yeah, another bottle. Oh no, it is. It is. It is. It's taking it away very. It's just got as far as the check valve. It's getting darker and darker by the minute. Yeah, it is. It's just pumping it so slowly. There you go. It is emptying it, but there's so little water that it's pumping it out very, 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 very slowly. So there you go. The bilge pump is now working. It's just pumping it out. It's got a long run. And it's a small bore pipe. So what I'm going to do next, not this time but next time, because that'll be fine to get drips of rainwater, I'm going to install a flood pump about 6 or 8 inches above that, with a much bigger bore pipe and a much higher output pressure and a separate float switch with an alarm on it, because it turns out you can't put an alarm on these ones with the integral switch on, because there's no way to kind of put the alarm between the sensor and the pump. So I'm going to get a really high capacity pump with a float switch and put an alarm on that one, and that way when this one just goes off to empty little dribbles of rainwater, that's grand. But if the alarm goes off, it means the float switch has gone up and it means the big pump has gone on, which means there's a bigger problem. So that's probably a better solution. 500 gallons an hour, yeah. But there's a very long run there, and there's airlocks in the pipe, and it's got to go over round various corners and over various bends. So it is emptying it, but it might just take a few minutes. I've also put a check valve on there as well to stop the water kind of flowing back through the pipe. I've put the check valve next to the skin fitting. Should really have a ball valve on, so when I change them I'll put ball valves on eventually. And there's also a check valve on the pump itself to stop backflow. I'm hoping that kind of kicks out in a second and stops running. Incidentally, this is the core that I've just drilled out of the top sides. So this isn't even below the waterline, and it's I'll measure it in a second, but that is the thickness of the fiberglass on this boat above the waterline. Have you got tape there? Yes. How thick is that?
It's an inch.
It's an inch thick.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there you go. That's like 25 mil?
Yeah.
Yeah. So even above the waterline, right at the top of the gunnels, by the tow rail, the fiberglass is an inch thick, and there's no core. So I brought my fiberglass kit down because I was expecting to find some core there and to take out a little bit of the core and backfill that with epoxy to protect the core. Don't need to. There is no core in that part.
Yeah, this boat does have a composite core, but what's quite good is that below the tow rail is solid.
Solid, yeah.
So it means that obviously if there is anything drilled into the tow rail,
yeah,
it can't get in through there. So I've done that. I've done all the four corners of this. So this now sits over the top of the cushion, like so, like that. But what I've now got to do, I've got to cut. I've drawn around it up in the shower block, but I've got to cut with a bit extra to make a Velcro pocket, like an opening, to make a Velcro opening to be able to put the cushion in. So I need to cut it to size with enough room for a seam all the way round, and then I need to cut enough for the two bits to overlap. Difficulty of making cushion covers is not making the cushion covers, it's getting the cushion in the covers. Just going to make the backs now. Yeah.
Doing that today?
Yeah. Just packing up to go home, but then I realised all of a sudden that I hadn't actually shown you my final finished product of the saloon sewing that I've been doing over the last few days. So yeah, I'm really pleased with how these turned out. It's more of a temporary measure. It's winter, the boat's really damp. Vinyl will probably not be our final choice of fabric. But I'll just let you know how much it costs, and I'm really pleased with the transformation of the boat just by doing this and some effort. And it cost, well, £20 really, the £30. So the foam for now, we got off Facebook Marketplace. Somebody had it on a spare bedroom bed and that had never been used. And this came from a old sofa bed that hadn't been used as well. So the backs were from a sofa bed, The seats were from a king size mattress or a double mattress that we cut to size for £30. The vinyl we already had, which was left over from the ceilings from Melody, but that was probably about £30 worth of vinyl that we had left anyway. Obviously the sewing machine, we already had thread and stuff like that we had, and I just used Velcro for the backs rather than zips. So for £50-60 we have a new saloon, and it looks so much nicer, so much more inviting, and as I say, long term we'll eventually put, you know, much better foam and much better fabric, but this should do us a year at least before we have to upgrade it. And it's nice, you can wipe it down, you can come and sit down in your wet weather gear if you have to, and it's not going to soak through into the foam. So I'm really happy with that. Let me know what you think. So that's it for another episode.
Yep, there you go. It's flipping cold
it's
today.
Really cold.
If you're wondering why we're
minus.
sitting out. Yeah, we're actually just packing up to go out. So hence the coats. But we thought we'd just say thank you so much for watching.
Yeah, as always, thank you so much for your support and your lovely comments.
Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to like.
Yeah, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.